The following program on BSSE Television is produced by KBIA-FM, Mid-Missouri Public Radio, and the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the Missouri School of Journalism.
Welcome to the television edition of Radio Friends, where we feature guests from all over central Missouri. Today, we're going to find out more about the Suicide Crisis Helpline and the Pure Eating Study. All that and a lot more. So let's get started right now. It's been maybe a couple of years since we talked about this particular topic, and that's introducing young kids to the dentist. That you got to be gentle about it, but it has to happen, and you want to try to make it a pleasant experience. First of all, at what age should you start talking to the kids about going to the dentist?
Well, it actually starts pretty young, and a lot of that starts at home usually first, as they start to get their first teeth in around 6 months old. Parents can gently clean them, sometimes with a wet washcloth at first, and then they make child brushes and things. But as far as first visit to the dentist, we get this question from parents pretty often, and the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry recommends around age 1 or 6 months after their first tooth comes in.
So the first tooth will come in about what age? 5 to 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
And then so 6 months after that, you should take your child to the dentist.
Yep.
Now, on that first dental visit, what happens?
It's more about talking to the parents of what their home life is like in terms of diet and, pacifiers or bottles and things like that, just to make sure the parent knows how to take care of a baby's teeth and mouth.
Do you actually examine the baby's teeth at that time?
We do. We do take a look, and usually it involves some crying, but at that time, it is kind of nice.
The baby crying or the parents crying?
Hopefully just the baby.
Okay.
And then we can see everything actually when they do. But it's really quick, and it's just to make sure things are on track and nothing is out of the ordinary.
So that's at about a year?
Yes.
But you don't actually do any x-rays or cleaning of the teeth, do you?
No, typically not.
Okay. So at about a year, the child should go to the dentist. Then what? When's the next visit?
We recommend then that the parents start bringing them every 6 months, and usually at that time, and usually that's just in conjunction with the parent's visit if the parent is a patient of the practice. And that allows two things. One, that the child's getting regular checkups and beginning to get things looked at, and two, gets them used to coming to a dentist office.
That's what I was gonna say.
As they grow and develop, they get used to the sights, the sounds, the smells, it's a different environment. And then we're able just to talk with the parents about here's how you can coach them at home and what to do at home to get them comfortable for visits. And every child develops and gets comfortable at different speeds. But we always try to introduce maybe one new thing a visit so that it's a nice, comfortable learning experience for the child.
Yeah. So if a child starts learning to come to the dentist, I would guess at 3 or 4 years old, they're starting to comprehend the dentist, right?
Yeah.
And you want to try to make it a fun experience. Do you find that when you have been with a child from 2 or 3 years old up to 7, 8, when they really start having to have dental care, that there's a difference as far as them feeling relaxed and better about it?
I do think so, yeah. And again, a lot of it is just about being comfortable and kind of knowing us or knowing the office and knowing that their parents come and things like that. So
now, as far as the baby teeth, do you ever see cavities in the first teeth that come in, the baby teeth?
Yes.
And if there is a cavity, would you fill that cavity, or since it's going to fall out anyway, do you just let it go?
So it really depends on how old the patient is too. But yes, sometimes we do need to fill them because they will have some of their baby teeth until they're about 10, 12, 13 years old. Some of the ones in the front you tend to lose earlier, but there are different options now that we can kind of delay treatment until a kid feels more comfortable, or if we feel like they're going to lose that tooth soon. So it really depends on the situation. And
So you do see cavities in baby teeth.
yes, all the time.
What causes the cavities?
The same thing that can cause it in an adult tooth. If home care is a big thing, brushing, keeping things clean, and educating that, like Dr. Abe said, that some of these teeth are going to be around until the child's 12 years old, and we want them to hold on to those teeth.
Yeah. So what are the last baby teeth that fall out?
They're back molars, so they're kind of right in the middle of their mouth by the time they start to fall out.
And that's at about 10 or 12 years old?
Starting about 10 for some girls, but you can hold on to them till even about 12, 13 years old.
Is there ever a time where they are not going to come out naturally and they have to be given a little tug to come out?
We've helped some baby teeth out. Yeah, if sometimes it's an eruption pattern. If the baby tooth's not getting out of the way for the adult tooth to come in, you have to help it out and get it and get. And
so what happens when the baby tooth is there? The adult tooth is forming and it's pushing up, and it's going to push. It pushes the baby tooth out. Is that the way it works? Kind of.
What it's actually doing is that our teeth have roots, right, that hold the tooth in our jaw. As the permanent tooth starts to come in, the adult tooth, it actually starts to absorb and take away the root of the baby tooth. And that's why when you get a loose tooth, all you're left with is the tooth that you see, because all the root structure has
I didn't realize that. So it's the adult tooth is absorbing the roots of the baby teeth.
Kind of, in a nutshell, yes.
Yeah, so when the baby tooth falls out, that's right. It's just the tooth.
Yeah.
There's no roots to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the adult tooth is going to grow.
Can come right through the gums and right into the place it should.
Okay. All right. Well, I had a whole bunch more questions, but we ran out of time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So when you think about our crisis services at Burrell, you can kind of think about an umbrella, and under that umbrella would be multiple programs. Each program serves a different population. And so with that, we are able to connect with many different individuals in the community, as well as collaborate with law enforcement, the courts, maybe other community partners.
You deal with suicide.
We do deal with suicidal individuals, yes.
Now, you've got a 988 number.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a crisis number for suicide, or is it a crisis number for any problem?
Good question. So it is a 3-digit crisis hotline number. So when we think about crisis, that is very self-defined. And so it could be anyone who is in any sort of distress, whether it be contemplating suicide or maybe housing insecurity. So whatever is causing you distress at that moment, when someone calls 988, they are going to reach a very well-trained crisis specialist who will help them navigate that distress and provide them resources and access to different information.
Is this ringing in to Burrell?
Yes.
So it's local?
So Burrell is part of the national network of certified call centers. So when someone calls 988, that call will be routed based on their area code and prefix.
Now, you mentioned besides suicide, because you can call this if you are contemplating or if you know someone who is contemplating suicide.
Exactly. So you can call on behalf of someone.
So
yes.
what's going to happen? Let's say you have the suspicion that someone you know or someone you love is contemplating suicide. You call this 988 number. What are they going to tell you?
So when you call 988, you will get a couple of options first. So if you press 1, that is going to connect you to a veteran crisis line. If you press 2, that will connect you to a Spanish-speaking crisis specialist. 3 is our gender affirming crisis specialist. And then if you wait past that greeting, you will be connected to the certified crisis line in your area. And so really, if you are the individual, we're going to ask about safety. And, depending on that current situation, then we are going to provide the resources and the assistance. Sometimes that means engaging other community partners as well. If you're calling on behalf of someone, it really can look the same. We will provide that individual, the best practices and the resources to help get the person that they're calling on behalf of assistance.
How long does all of this take? I mean, if you're in a crisis situation, someone who is contemplating suicide, is this going to jump into place within a matter of minutes?
Yes. So the first questions we will usually ask is about safety, looking at have they already done something? Because if an act has already been completed, then, that call is going a different direction. We are calling for medical assistance to help that individual. Depending on, the other questions or responses, sometimes we're able to help resolve that crisis. We're linking them to other maybe programs even within Burl or other community programs as well.
Yeah. You mentioned housing insecurity. Do you have calls for people who call about this?
Sure.
And how are you handling that?
It will vary person to person. It's hard to say we will handle a housing call this way because it really does
you have to
vary.
Delve into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure we're addressing the true needs of that individual. Like I said, it's self-defined.
Right.
And so, yeah.
What do you see as a future for the 988? Do you see it branching out in more directions?
Sure. So really right now, 988 is kind of the front door of what we're looking at for Missouri's crisis continuum. So we have, kind of what we call someone to call. So that's going to be our 988 call centers. And then when we look at the next piece, maybe someone to go. So our mobile crisis response team. And then some place to go. So we have our, our behavioral crisis centers. So that's the big picture of what we're looking at in Missouri as our crisis continuum, are those 3 pieces.
How many calls do you get on an average?
So on an average, when we look, since 988 started about a year ago, our calls
it's about a year old now.
Yeah, it started in July of 22. So we are
it's just exactly
now,
1 year.
Yeah. Yep.
How many calls have you handled over that year period?
So I can kind of break it out by month. We average about 2,400 to 2,600 calls a month to our
2,400 to 2,600.
So that will come in through 988 or our crisis hotline. Now,
2,600 calls a month.
Yes.
That's a lot of calls.
That is a lot of calls, and about a fifth of them will come in to us through 988. So, like you said, that is a lot of calls. Through, at Burl, we are very proud of the staff and the calls that we make. We average about a 97 to 98% answer rate with all of the calls that come into our center.
Do you follow up on the people that you have assisted to see how they are doing?
We do. So we have dedicated crisis staff who will follow up with each individual within the next business day. Sometimes they need additional support, or sometimes they've gotten, what they need. Okay,
so that number is 98. Well, actually, you can go to the website, Missouri, spell out the word Missouri, 988.org, and that will give you all the information. What is a Pure Study?
The Pure study tells us that we can keep nutrition simple, that we don't have to be a registered dietitian or a medical doctor to know how to feed ourselves well, that if you eat 6 foods on a consistent basis, we can lower our risk of many conditions, from dying early, heart disease, and stroke, by up to 30%. Just a tremendous difference. And these 6 foods they're really readily available, and they're not necessarily expensive. This study, the Pure study, Paul, is the largest study ever done in nutrition. It looked at people from every habitable continent in the world, over 150,000 people for 10 years. And it shows us that nutrition really is much more simple than we thought.
Okay, so let's go over the 6 different types of foods that you should eat. Number 1, vegetables.
A couple of servings of vegetables daily. We can all do that.
Right. And now what is considered a serving? A cup or a half a cup?
So of a cooked vegetable, usually a half a cup. Now, if it's greens, like you might have in a salad, it's a full cup. So that's a serving of vegetables.
Okay.
So a couple of those a day. And
2 servings of vegetables a day.
Yes.
Now, I honestly say I go over that. So I'm number 1, I'm doing good on that. And then fruits.
Fruits, a couple of servings a day, and that would include something like a medium-sized apple, or a cup of grapes, or some cherries, like we know you love. Yes.
Yeah. So 2 servings of fruit a day. Then legumes.
Then you want to, and legumes, as you know, are beans or lentils, and you want to have 2 or 3 servings weekly of that.
Okay, not a day.
You can have them daily. They're great foods. They're highly nutritious. They're full of fiber. They're terrific for us. So legumes, beans or lentils, 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay, then nuts, 1 serving a day.
How do you like that? So nuts, all different sorts of nuts. It can be pecans or walnuts or hazelnuts or cashews. All of these nuts.
Peanuts too.
Peanuts are a legume, actually, but they could be.
Peanuts fall into the legume.
Yeah. So you can have.
Okay, well then I'm answering my legume
question
too, because I mixed the peanuts in with almonds and.
Yeah, so the tree nuts are terrific, and so you can have a serving every day. And many of us just love to eat this food.
Yes, and then dairy. Now this is where I think some people have some questions about the dairy product.
Yeah, so a serving of dairy daily, that's about 8 ounces of whole milk, or 8 ounces of yogurt, or 8 ounces of kefir. Some cheese would be a little bit less than that. And what they stipulated in this study, and many other studies in the last 10 years, Paul, is whole fat dairy is really the healthiest for us. Some of the fats in dairy are actually lower risk of cardiovascular disease. In this very large study, it again showed that whole fat dairy was much healthier. In fact, the dean of the School of Nutrition at Tufts University in Boston said recently that it is time for the National Nutrition Guidelines of Healthcare to catch up to the science, that million lives depend on this. The new results of this study, in combination with many other studies, call for a reevaluation of the guidelines to avoid whole-fat dairy. In other words, it is good for us. It's one of those things because it's so nutrient-dense with the minerals, with the healthy fats, with protein, that it's really good to add to our diet. And when we add these nutritious foods, we give our body what it needs to repair.
So you're saying whole milk is better for you than skim milk?
Much better, much better. So when you make skim milk from whole milk, you extract a lot of important ingredients, including some of the fats, and you actually put back other things like whiteners and thickeners that you don't need. But what's more important is the whole milk is more nutrient dense, and the specific fats that are in dairy have been shown to lower cardiovascular disease, both in this study, and in this study it showed that it lowered heart attacks, this whole array of things, lowered heart attacks by 18%, stroke by 13%, and overall mortality by 30%. So not just this study, but several studies in the last decade tell us that whole fat dairy is healthier for us.
What about butter?
So butter is just the fat from dairy. So a modest amount of that is okay, but that wasn't studied specifically in this. So we're talking about whole fat yogurt, whole fat cottage cheese, whole fat ricotta cheese, whole fat kefir, these sorts of things, whole fat milk. That's what you want to add 1 serving a day.
Okay. And then fish.
Fish, yes. Fish, 2 or 3 servings a week.
Now, does it make any difference what kind of fish?
They didn't really parse that out, Paul. We know that the cold water fish, the salmon, the sardines, the cod, the tunas, these kind of fish tend to be healthier for us because of the good quality oils in them. But in this particular study, it didn't parcelate whether it came from an inland river or if it came from from a cold water ocean.
Okay. Now, I noticed that red meat is not in this at all.
Yeah.
So what about eating?
So there's a couple of things that weren't mentioned here. So red meat, 3 ounces a day was shown, had trended towards actually better health for this worldwide population. So if it was unprocessed red meat, we're not talking about hot dogs or bologna or cold cuts. We're talking about whole processed red meat like lamb or beef or others, and pork. And that was at 3 ounces a day that trended to be healthier for us because it's a nutrient-dense food. We're not talking about, a hamburger with every meal, but a serving a day was good. The other thing that was also healthy, Paul, was whole grain. Whole grains were generally neutral. They weren't necessarily good for us or necessarily bad for us. But the thing that clearly was not healthy for us was the processed grains. That is the chips and the snacks and the cookies and the breads and these sorts of things. That is the processed grain. That was net detrimental.
Okay, so white bread is a process. But what about whole wheat bread?
That's generally if it's... when you take a grain and you grind it into a powder and then form it back into a bread or to a Cheerio or to any sort of a processed grain, it's less healthy for many reasons. Partly because it liberates the sugar so much so quickly that it changes our metabolism in a way that generally isn't healthy. A small amount of that can be okay.
Okay. So you can keep it simple. The bottom line, as you have on here, is eat whole foods. That's
Keep
important.
it simple. This study tells us that we can do it ourselves.
Where can they come to your website to find the pure study?
Yeah, drchrislink.com. There'll be more information there. There's also some videos on there for nutrition and exercise, and there's also, last is my nutrition essay that I've written recently that's available for everybody.
Today, you wanted to talk about something a little bit different, and that is?
Medication compliance. Because to explain the magnitude of this problem, nearly 66% of the U.S. adult population, which is 131 million people, are on chronic prescription medications. And on an average, they are on 4 medications a day.
Wait. Okay, break that up. So you're saying that 166 million people are on a chronic prescription. What does that mean?
So not medication like just an antibiotic or a painkiller that
it's
complete.
It's an ongoing medication.
Yes,
okay.
It's a medication that they're on for like months or years.
Okay. Would that be like for cholesterol medication or blood pressure medication? Okay.
That's correct.
Then you're saying most of those people are on 4 different types of medication a day.
Yes, the average is about 4. They can be on more, but the average is 4 medications a day.
Okay. Now, the compliance, that's where you're concerned about. The statistic you told me, I found hard to believe, but I believe you. But it's...
Only 50% of the population is compliant with their medications.
And explain what that means.
So if like 100 people are prescribed medications, only 50 people are taking it as prescribed.
Why?
Because life is getting very fast and stressful, and they have so many things going on. Maybe they just forget, or sometimes they think it's a miscommunication between doctor and patient. They think they may just need to take it for a week, and if they feel better, though the doctor does not discontinue, they may discontinue it on their own.
So they're making the decision themselves.
Yes, and sometimes they experience side effects because things have not been explained to them properly, or they didn't expect that side effect, and then they just discontinue and forget to tell the doctor that they discontinued it on their own.
And this is not good.
Yes, because this leads to 50% of treatment failure, 125,000 deaths a year, and it's the reason for 25% of all hospitalizations.
25% of all hospitalizations are because people did not follow their prescription to the T.
Yes.
They decided on their own that they were going to stop taking this medicine because they felt better.
Yes.
But the thing is, you feel better, just because you feel better doesn't mean that the condition has gone away. It's been improved because you're taking the medication.
Yes.
So you need to stay on that medication until the doctor tells you enough.
Yes, that's exactly correct. So they shouldn't take decisions on their own. Doctor-patient communication should be much better, especially when prescribing a new medication. You should go over with them what they can expect, what side effects are common, and if they were to experience these side effects, that they need to contact the provider and not make decisions on their own.
If you're taking a medication and it makes you feel sick, I guess the first thing you want to say is, I'm not going to take this anymore.
Yes.
But call the doctor.
Yeah, because there are always alternatives to that medication.
Right. So if one type of medication is making you sick, don't stop taking it until you talk to the doctor. Then they can prescribe a different type of medication that may not have that same side effect.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Do you see, how do you see this improving? Can it be improved?
Yes.
How can you get the message across to people? Half of them can't stop taking their medicine.
So as I said, doctor-patient relationship, that's important. The other thing is like a simple thing like a pill box. Just setting out your medications in the pill box would be helpful. Then to have a calendar or a checklist in a visible place at home is helpful. And sometimes coordinating it with your daily activities, like after a shower or after exercise or at bedtime, and to keep your medications visible near your bedside or in your gym room, wherever you're like bound to remember it, is a good idea.
Is it important that you take the medication that you're prescribed, if you're taking something once a day, like I take cholesterol medication, is it important that I take it at the same time every day, or what if it varies 3 or 4 hours in a day?
That is fine, but the same time every day, you're like bound to remember it better.
Right,
That's why
okay.
we tell patients try to like form a ritual, because that way it becomes a part of your reflex. So before bedtime, you remember, okay, I need to take all my medication.
But if let's say if you're taking it normally at 7 o'clock in the morning, but something happened and you couldn't take it till noon, that still is okay.
That's still okay. I would say go ahead and take it whenever you remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's specifically for cholesterol medication. But other medication that you have to take 4 or 5 hours apart, it's important that you stay on that schedule. What if you miss one? You shouldn't double up and take 2 the next 4 hours.
No, I would say like if it's a blood pressure medicine, monitor your blood pressure. And if it's running high, then just take the next dose. But if it's running really high, then maybe you can double up. But
should you talk to your doctor first?
Yes. If you're not sure about anything, definitely talk to your doctor.
Now, with blood pressure medicine, do you take that once a day or twice a day?
It depends on like the duration of its effect. There are pills that you take once a day, some twice a day, some thrice a day. So it really depends. You cannot generalize.
But the important thing is, remember to take your medication.
Yes.
Don't prescribe on your own that you decide you're not going to take it today or you're not going to take it again because you had a side effect. Call the doctor, talk to the doctor's office or the nurse. There's somebody that will give you the correct, right?
That is exactly correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was eye-opening because I had no idea that 50% of people on medication don't take it properly.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Smriti Duriajan from Truman VA Hospital, we appreciate you coming by today and sharing with us. Come back again.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Something you'd like to hear or see, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me an email, pepperp@missouri.edu. And as Anand always says, smile.